And what is up, everybody? I am here in the middle of kind of redecorating. As you can see, got some Marvel Legends up, Spawn, Rebirth, the McFarlane Matrix, posable, limited articulation, action figures that recreated. I used to have these originally. I had unboxed them and I had used them as bookends. There were some really badass looking bookends, but yeah, right now. And martial arts Barbie. This is the only time I've ever gone out of my way, to get a Barbie because it's martial arts, and I actually want to have a collection. I've been trying to, and I used to have a collection of 12-inch posable martial arts dolls. You had I had a Kickboxer Max Steel. Unfortunately gave him away. There's a Kickboxer Action Man, and even the GI Joe. GI Joe dolls. There's a Taekwondo doll, as well as a Marine Corps amateur boxer. So and Taekwondo Times used to sell this 12-inch doll, Taiho, the Taekwondo doll, and he came with interchangeable hands and the headgear, the chest protector, this, that, the other, and he had the ability to actually stand on one leg. It's very, very cool to see that. And I'm not really here to talk about my figure collection. Granted, I also got some wrestling as well. Samoa Joe with the NXT belt, as well as Brock Lesnar when he was the last undisputed WWE champion. That was before. They did the. Actually, no, they had the brand split, but that was before they introduced the World Heavyweight title, which just looked like the old WCW belt. But so, speaking of Brock Lesnar and martial arts and just combat sports in general. Granted, professional wrestling isn't exactly a sport. It's not really a competition. It's a show, and it's a very, very, it's a very good show that I still have a lot of, vested interest in, just not with WWE, because for whatever reason you don't see the same thing with the indie promotions. You don't see this with the New Japan Pro Wrestling. You don't see like all the deaths that had occurred, within pro wrestling. You didn't see coming from all the shows that weren't mainstream. Indie promotions didn't really have that problem. New Japan Pro Wrestling, their schedule, those guys, I don't know how much money they make. They probably make a lot of money, and they don't wrestle nearly as much as a John Cena or anything like that. And it's because of that they're able to put on much better shows. They're actually able to perform a lot better. But speaking of, not, going out there so much, here's Conor McGregor, who finally got stripped of the belt, and it's about time. Seriously, it's about time. This is a man who, he won the featherweight title, didn't do anything with it. Won the lightweight title, didn't do anything with it, and basically just holding both titles hostage, or trying to hold both titles hostage. And when they said he had to relinquish one, it's not like with George St. Pierre. At least with George St. Pierre, he said, yeah, I'll fight middleweight. He had taken up. One of the biggest problems was they wanted a super fight between him and Anderson Silva. He said that if I was to go up to 180, I probably wouldn't be able to cut down again. To be able to have to stack on that much muscle. For him to be able to fight at 185 pounds, that's one thing. But when he had been gone for 3 years, and now it was Mike Bisping, the middleweight champ, as well as you had their current interim, now official a middleweight champion for GSP to get in there. Now, he get in there, he put on a good show, but you could tell he was kind of rusty. You could tell he was rusty. You could tell right off the bat he was having a difficult time because of the size difference between the two of them. And yes, he managed to pull off the win, but the first thing he said was, "I don't know if I could do this again. This has been this is the toughest. Michael Bisping's the toughest guy I've ever fought, and he's fought some tough dudes, mind you. He made them look, he made them look not so tough, a majority of them, but he's fought some tough guys, and for him to say that about Michael Bisping, says something about the trouble that he had trying to fight Michael Bisping, and for him to relinquish the middleweight title, understandable. He's still the fourth man to have done it, but for Conor McGregor, one of the things I left out of my greatest of all times, my greatest of all time rant, there's one category I left out, and that was double champion. Who's the greatest double champion of all time? And sure as hell ain't Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor, I don't know what he did with the was it Cage Warrior or Cage Rage championships that he won. He was the lightweight and featherweight champion for both of those. For that promotion, whichever one, Cage Rage, Cage Warriors, I'm not sure. They're both they're both out in the UK. And comes to UFC, wins the featherweight title. Okay, I'll go for this featherweight belt. I mean the lightweight belt. Loses to Nate Diaz. Should have just said, you know what? Especially when because there was no time, because he was too busy trying to get a lightweight title shot. He didn't bother. He didn't bother to defend his featherweight title, especially when Jose Aldo won the belt back and became the interim featherweight champion. He didn't even try to go back down to featherweight, beat Jose Aldo again, and say, yeah, I'm featherweight champion. Didn't even do that. He just no. I'm going for the lightweight title. When he wins the lightweight title, is forced to relinquish the featherweight title, and he's there. Where's my effing belt? Where's my effing belt? Oh yeah. It's like, dude, you don't have the belts anymore. You had to give it up. You already agreed to that. You wouldn't defend it. You wanted to fight for this one. You won this one. Move on. Oh, I want to fight for the welterweight belt now. It was like you won two belts, neither of which you have tried to defend. And then when you didn't get your way, you left to fight Floyd Mayweather. How the hell you managed to get that, I don't know. And yeah, you did a good job. Yeah, the fight was early, but clearly you're not as good as you thought you were. Now you got, there's only 3 men that have ever been double champions like that to hold championships in 2 different weight classes at the same time. I'm talking about world champions. And the other one was, the first man to do it, Dan Henderson. And he's not the greatest one to do. He's not the greatest double champion. Because unfortunately, he won the Pride Welterweight Grand Prix. And with that, he was awarded the Pride Welterweight Championship. Competes in the second Welterweight Grand Prix. Loses in the semifinals loses in the quarterfinals. He got a bye from the preliminaries to the quarterfinals and lost in the quarterfinals to the Japanese fighter who eventually won that Grand Prix, and he was the last. He was the last Pride champion. He was the last Pride Grand Prix winner. And okay, but he was, Dan Henderson was still welterweight champion, and they immediately gave him a title shot against Vanderlei Silva, who had been Pride's middleweight champion for 6 years. He knocks out Vanderlei Silva, so now he's Pride middleweight and Pride welterweight champion. Pride gets bought out. The very next show is their last show after Nobuhiko Takada's like, oh yeah, they're in Las Vegas. Yeah, we plan on doing this. Yeah, plan on coming out doing this again, and they literally never did it again. Immediately after was their very last show, and the very last show they couldn't even get any of their star players to come in and fight. That's how bad that situation was. But since Pride was bought out by UFC, they had 2 different title unification bouts, to which Dan Henderson lost the both of them. He lost the unification bout for the Pride middleweight and UFC light heavyweight championships, and he lost the fight that was supposed to unify, but due to injury, it got pushed back, and nobody even cared about the Pride welterweight belts anymore. When the unification for the UFC middleweight and the Pride welterweight belt. The only other double world champion was David Branch. And unlike Conor McGregor, who never tried defending his belts, unlike Dan Henderson, who failed at maintaining his championship status, David Branch was the World Series, MMA World Series of Fighting. He was their light heavyweight and middleweight champion at the same time, and had actively defended both championships more than once. What else is there to say about that? I mean, you have 2 different world championships for the same promotion in 2 different weight classes, and you're constantly having and Dan Henderson was constantly, like, even in UFC and Pride and in UFC, would constantly cut from, okay, go from 200, next fight's 205, cut down to 185. 185 got to bulk up, next fight got to bulk up to 205. Did that over and over again. The other person who did it a lot was Kevin Randleman. I mean, God rest Kevin Randleman, unfortunately. It's been ridiculous for certain things like that. And Conor McGregor being stripped of the title, okay, great. He should just be let go of the UFC, because for what? He hasn't fought in the UFC in how long? It's been a while. He's being stripped of the championship. Okay, great. He should just be let go. I mean, he was. I doubt he spent the $100 million he got from the Mayweather fight. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. But you got, and then now the other really big thing, big thing that's happening right now is the Bellator Fighting Championship Heavyweight Grand Prix. Now, I always said bring back the Grand Prix. I wanted it to be in the UFC. I didn't want it to be in Bellator. Bellator used to have their tournaments, to which they never crowned champions. They were just tournament winners, and they did away with that, which I thought was stupid. said to be the tough. Like that was one thing that set them apart from UFC. That was the one thing that gave a lot of up and coming professional fighters a real chance at making a name for themselves. They're not they're not getting a push. They're literally fighting their way to the top. Not like with the Ultimate Fighter, as tough any of the winners of the Ultimate Fighter, as tough as it is to win the Ultimate Fighter. Clearly, that's the guy. The winner of that. Not only does he get the six-figure contract, with the UFC, but he's definitely going to, go. He's definitely gonna get a push from the company. There's a lot of fighters who unfortunately fall to the wayside when it comes to stuff like that, and for Bellator, when it came to that, is like you had no choice but to root for these guys who won. And if they would have kept that up, maybe, I wouldn't have such a beef with them holding a World Grand Prix. Now, they had their 4-man one night tournament, which ended very well. That was it was interesting to see. Hadn't seen that in a while. I thought the format, how they did it, the first match is the semifinal match is 2 rounds, and then the final match is 3 rounds. So even if you go to the distance, you just went the standard 5 rounds for a championship fight. It makes sense to have done it like that. I like that they did it like that. But now they have this Grand Prix, and it's only 8 fighters, not 16. So, just about all the other Grand Prix had 16 fighters. So I think the first Pride lightweight and welterweight Grand Prix only had 8 fighters in each weight class. So okay, there's that. But you have it's like you have 8 fighters when you should have 16. All of these guys, well, no, 6 of them are UFC washouts. 2 of them have never fought in the UFC, but they are former champions way past their prime. I'm not excited about this at all. At all. It's bad. I mean, the list is probably going to, you got Matt Mitrione. You got Quentin Rampage Jackson. You got Chael Sonnen. You got Fedor Emelianenko. You got Muhammad Lal, King Mo. You got Ryan Bader. You got Roy Nelson. All these guys who, no, like seriously, it's as if they're becoming WCW. WCW on its last legs, basically what they were trying to do was buy out all these WWF wrestlers. They buy out all these wrestlers because they had and because Ted Turner owned them. He could afford to pay them whatever the hell they wanted. And because of that, he's able to pull all these, wrestlers from WWF. Problem is, they didn't know how to, even the homegrown talent that they had, they didn't know how to utilize properly. And because of that, WCW is dead. Now you got Bellator more or less doing the same thing. These UFC fighters, there's, being let go. Their contracts are up. Some of them is just, they got nothing left. They literally have nothing left. And Bellator is just buying them out. Like they're supposedly the next big thing. And it's pretty sad to see that. And for, granted, when Risen Fighting Federation, when the Risen Federation, when they had their in 2015, I think they had their heavyweight Grand Prix, and King Mo won. Shocking. I didn't know I don't know anybody else that was on that. I don't know anybody else that was in that Grand Prix. I just found out that, oh, by the way, he won the Grand Prix. And it's interesting, is that's the second championship that he's ever had. Okay, good for him, this, that, the other. But in 2016, he gets knocked out by Mirko Cro Cop. And Mirko Cro Cop, I said, greatest openweight fighter, because not only did he, not only did he win the Pride Openweight and the Risen Openweight Grand Prix, he's the only MMA fighter to have won 2 Grand Prix, 2 MMA Grand Prix. And for King Mo in this Grand Prix, I don't know how he's going to do. I would say Ryan Bader, because Ryan Bader is the least washed up out of all of them. I mean, Fedor had that absolutely ridiculously awful, humiliating knockout victory to Matt Mitrione. Matt Mitrione, who was never really a world class, competitor, as far as especially going into title contention. Like I don't even think he was ever considered as any of the top 10 heavyweights in the UFC. I could be wrong, but like the matches he put on were never necessarily the best. Some guys he might be able to knock out. Some guys he could outscore. But not necessarily the best. And for him to be let go of UFC, okay, fine. You think that'd be the end of it? Instead, they got him back with, they got him with Bellator, and he got the biggest win of his career over Fedor Emelianenko. It's like, yes, he had a 3-fight win streak after a 3-fight losing streak. After the man had done anything and everything possible, as a heavyweight in mixed martial arts at the time, being Pride's heavyweight champion, winning their heavyweight Grand Prix, being the first ever WAMA heavyweight champion, and being champion, being the number one heavyweight, not to mention actually considered pound for pound for how many, the best, best fighter, the baddest man on the planet, and you managed to beat him at the end, towards the end of his career. Not impressive. Greatest victory to date. Not impressed. So, really not looking forward to this Grand Prix. I don't know how it's going to go down. I really don't know who's going to win. I really don't. If Fedor wins, it would be a miracle, because he, I'm not taking anything away from Fedor. Okay, at one point, and he is the greatest heavyweight of all time. But his time is past. Chael Sonnen, reinventing yourself at heavyweight, whatever. Quentin Jackson, he friggin', after, weighing in like 50 pounds overweight, to fight, to have your rematch with King Mo. That was just absolutely ridiculous, man. Then you got, King Mo, who, I don't freaking know. I really don't. Matt Mitrione, don't really care. Ryan Bader, like I said, Ryan Bader, Chael Sonnen, first person he's going up against is Rampage Jackson, which I think, because he's a more technical wrestler, so he's probably gonna beat Rampage. But then you got guys but then Ryan Bader, like I said, out of all 8 of those guys, he's the least washed up. He's the only one that doesn't have a championship to his credit. None. None. Not even for the indie promotions. And the man has been, he was a top contender in the UFC for how many years? And was never given a title shot. Got screwed out of him. Got screwed out of him a couple times too. So if it's just, I'm not looking forward to this Grand Prix with only 8 fighters at all. It's like, yes, they're established stars, but it's like, come on. At least when I said bring back the Grand Prix for, to crown the new UFC light heavyweight champion, because just giving Cormier back the belt is like, okay, I understand you had to strip John Jones, but Cormier still lost. If you just stripped the champion of the title, that means there is no champion. So you have a few established light heavyweights. You have your top 10 rankings, add 6 more guys into the mix and throw down like that. Not take 8 over the hill fighters that fought in other promotions to do a Grand Prix, especially when you have a bunch of guys, waiting for an opportunity to fight in a Grand Prix, and you put all those other guys from different promotions to fight for you. No homegrown talent whatsoever. That is pathetic. That is just sad. That is just wrong. But Bellator's run by idiots. I've made mention of that fact. Especially with the absolute debacle that was Shamrock Gracie 3. Broke that down pretty easily. Those idiots allowing Royce Gracie to fight without his hands being taped up, as well as the fact that when he kneed Ken Shamrock in the groin, they're gonna play it back to where they're gonna do the instant replay of a completely different strike. Morons, freaking morons. And then them not overturning the decision or anything like that because it was obviously it was controversial. Ref didn't see it, this, that, the other. Was it a cheap shot? Not even gonna try. Was it not even gonna try to go there? Still a cheap victory. A cheap victory. And then of course, Kimbo, God rest him, versus Dada 5000. And Dada 5000 proved himself to be every bit the bum that Kimbo knew he was. So outside of the documentary, I don't know how the hell Dada 5000 ever got famous. That's neither here nor there. Also, my last video I posted was of me on Blue Bloods. It's the first time my character had a name. It is the most I had ever been utilized as a background actor. I actually got to interact with the principal actors, so I can honestly say that I've worked with Donnie Wahlberg. He doesn't know who I am, but I've worked with him. He's a cool guy. Then, unfortunately, because the other person who recorded this is holding it hostage, I had, for those of you who saw, I actually did have an MMA fight, back in June, and I posted it up, and it was 3 parts to it. But I had another one just a couple weeks ago, and the person who recorded it, their phone is holding it hostage. And that fight I lost, but it was for a championship, and I got robbed. I got robbed because as soon as I stepped out of the ring, everybody was telling me, dude, you won that fight. So that's pretty much it. You know, still not looking forward to this Grand Prix. Hit Conor McGregor. I'm done talking. You guys have a good night.